Hi everyone, welcome to the MrpTech podcast. This is episode 148. My name is Matt, and thanks so much again for joining us this week in the podcast. I've got another great show lined up for you today. I'm going to get into the main topic in just a little bit, but recently, one of the things that I have been thinking a lot about is this podcast. And when I commit to doing something, when I put my full effort into something, I usually don't give anything but my absolute best. And that reflects in many aspects of my life, whether it comes from teaching and expecting high performance from students, motivating students to push themselves to whatever the next level is for themselves, or my professional music career and hiring musicians to play in a professional big band and putting on the absolute best show possible, or it comes to podcasting. And when I first started this podcast, I was very green. I did not know much about the podcasting sort of industry, so to speak. I did not expect to really podcast more than, say, 10 episodes. I thought it was going to be something that I wanted to do, and after 10 episodes, I'd run out of things to talk about. Well, that isn't the case, and podcasting has become something that I am very passionate about. It has helped me become a better public speaker. It has helped me to meet new people that I would never have had a chance to meet. For example, we have our Discord chat server that we have set up over at mrptechreviews.com, and every day, I get to talk with people from all over the world, and that's a really exciting thing for me. We have listeners in Europe. We have listeners in the Indian Ocean, on islands in the Indian Ocean. We have listeners from all over the world. Some of them come into the Discord chat server in the middle of the night for me, so I don't get to talk with them very much. But they pop in, they say hello, and they drop topics in the chat, and it's always fun hearing from them. In fact, one of my favorite things, we have a listener who's been a really long time listener who often drops photos of his travels in Europe. And for me, that's really kind of neat because I don't travel a whole lot, and I get to see different parts of the world. So that sort of inspired me to start posting pictures of adventures that I do. One of the things that I really like to do, I really like to hike, and I've been getting more active with the nice weather here recently, and I've been posting some pictures of some mountains that we've been climbing and such. And it's really neat to have all of that input, all of those connections, whether it's listeners from Alabama or other listeners from the Podnuts network that they just pop in and say hello. So I really enjoy all of that as being a podcaster. But one of the things that I've found recently is that I feel that I'm not giving my best for the podcast. And I'm not really sure why that is. And I feel like my content is good. I feel like the effort is there. But for some reason, it's not quite exactly where I want it to be. And I would really like to grow this podcast into something worthwhile for not only all of the listeners, worthwhile for myself, and worthwhile to anybody who happens to stop in and listen to a show for the first time. So I've been thinking a lot about the podcast, and I would really like to grow this podcast. And from time to time, I hear feedback from listeners, and it seems like listeners really enjoy the show. And I'm not really concerned a lot about making money with the podcast. I'm not pod fading by any means. I really enjoy sitting down to a microphone once a week and talking about things that I'm really interested in talking about. But with certain life circumstances, I've been sort of reflecting on how to make this podcast more successful for myself. And ultimately, I really enjoy all the different aspects of podcasting. But if I could find a way to even make just a few dollars from a podcast, I would be highly motivated to take it up a notch for you and give back to you that way. So, especially as I come into the summer season, which is usually financially the most troublesome for me, I would appreciate it if you took a second, maybe if you really enjoy the show, to go to mrptechreviews.com and hit the donate button up there. Whatever amount you feel is good for you, I would really appreciate that. And there's also an option there if you'd like to make a monthly donation in whatever amount you'd like to make. That would really help me out. And I really don't like talking about this on the show. In fact, I brought it up last week, but I don't remember the last time before that I have brought up the fact that you can donate to me. So I don't want you to think that I'm going to constantly nag and persist about this, but I wanted to bring it up because it does take a lot of time and effort to put a show together. And I appreciate you all listening every week. And thank you very much if you do make a donation. I will make sure to thank you if an email is provided or such. I'll send you an email and thank you for that. Okay, let's just get on with the show. I have a really sort of I've been busy the last few months, and I've listened to more audiobooks than I usually do. In fact, I haven't really listened to many other podcasts out there within the last few months. I've been really deep diving in audiobooks. And the reason for that, I think, goes back to probably around September, October, November-ish, when I was really listening to the final book that was available for a particular series that was 55 hours long. And that book just sucked up about 2.5 months worth of audiobook time. And so recently I've been really just hammering at audiobooks, short audiobooks. And I've read probably more audiobooks in the last few months than I have in the last 2 years. So I just wanted to check in with you, and I wanted to talk to you about a couple of audiobooks that I really enjoyed, and they're in no particular order. Now, usually I save my favorite audiobooks for the year. I usually do that in December, sort of a yearly roundup. But I've read so many that I just want to talk about a few that I've read recently that I found really interesting. So the first one that I want to bring up in no particular order is called The Rise and Fall of the Dinosaurs, A New History of a Lost World. It's by Stephen Brusatte, Brusatte, Steve Brusatte, narrated by Patrick Lauer, Lawlor. It's 10 hours and 7 minutes long. It's unabridged, a complete book. It was released last April, and it took me about a year to get to it. I purchased it right as it came out because it was something that all of a sudden I started thinking about, and I wanted to learn more about dinosaurs. And I pre-ordered the book and instantly had it when it was released, and finally got around to reading it just about, I'd say about a month ago. This book is really interesting. It's a fascinating story about the histories of the dinosaurs, where they came from through their sort of peak, and then ultimately talking about their demise. And for me, it was really enlightening to learn about the different time periods that some of these dinosaurs existed. And it sort of blew my mind that sort of some of my recollection from elementary school learning about dinosaurs, that I sort of had a lot of facts wrong, and that as time has gone on, scientists and archaeologists have learned much, much more about dinosaurs than I previously knew. So it was a very enlightening book. And one of the things that really got me was the obviously the story of the extinction event that led to the dinosaurs' demise. In the past, there was theories about volcanoes or a comet or asteroid hitting the Earth, and we're so far removed from those types of events that when it was explained in the book that everything within 600 miles of this asteroid or comet impact was instantly killed, that puts you in a little bit more perspective on how things came to an end. But most people are aware of that story. But what I found most fascinating was the story leading up to that event and how the continents, the supercontinents that once were, how those influenced where dinosaurs were located and which species were in certain areas of the world. And as time went on, how these species became isolated. Very, very fascinating story. So again, the rise and fall of the dinosaurs, A New History of the World. Just an outstanding book. I gave it 5-star review on Audible. And if you know me, that's very, very difficult for me to give a 5-star review. The next book I picked up because I'm a huge fan of this particular person. And I also have some students that are also very interested in the topic of physics. And so this is Neil deGrasse Tyson's book, Astrophysics for People in a Hurry. This is a real quick, real easy read. It's 3 hours and 41 minutes long. For me, I have an hour-long commute, and so I could do that in a day and a half, basically. And it's Neil deGrasse Tyson narrating the book. So basically, it's the history of the universe in a nutshell. And I can't really explain it any more than that. But Neil deGrasse Tyson has the sort of capability to take these extremely complicated topics and whittle them down to simple concepts that everyone can understand, and also discusses the importance of these discoveries so that, in layman's terms, everybody that's out there who may have negative thoughts about why money is being spent in these fields can have a better understanding of their importance and what it actually how it will actually benefit us in the future. So this book, Astrophysics for People in a Hurry, very, very quick read and a great read. And I can't I can't recommend that book in any other way. Again, I gave that 5 stars all the way around. And moving on really quickly to another book that I believe that I spoke about maybe in January briefly. This is a true life story of one of the world's most famous hackers. It's called Ghost in the Wires: My Adventures as the World's Most Wanted Hacker. This was written by Kevin Mitnick and William L. Simon, and narrated by one of my favorite narrators, Ray Porter, who also did the Bobiverse series, I believe. And this book is about 14 hours long. It was originally released in 2011 as an audiobook. Kevin Mitnick, if you don't know who he is, he started off as a phone phreaker. He became probably one of the most wanted hackers in the world. Eventually was being he grew up in California, I believe, as a young boy, and then started just as a game, started to see what he could do to get access to computers on campuses and access to free phone calls before it was actually illegal to do. And it's the story of his life, how he was eventually tracked down by the FBI, and how he actually stayed one step ahead by hacking certain FBI agents and staying one step ahead of them all, and caused quite a stir. And then it became when he eventually did go to jail several different times, there became a movement that was called the Free Kevin movement. And due to sort of extenuating circumstances, he was actually released from jail. And the book is written in such a way that you sort of understand that he had some issues when it came to the way he thought and in his mind, he wasn't doing anything bad. And in my mind, as he kept doing these things, one after another, I sort of had the opinion after reading this book that he really probably should have still been in jail. And he got lucky and basically let out on a technicality. A lot of people didn't agree with that philosophy. And so read the book for yourself, called Ghost in the Wires, My Adventures as the World's Most Wanted Hacker, by Kevin Mitnick. And it was a 5-star book. It was a really great book. It was just, there's a lot of really crazy stories in there that you think, how in the world can anybody get away with doing this for so long? It makes you think twice about anybody you talk to over the phone or over the internet or anything you do online. Really, it's even I'm not really into hacker stories, but this was a real, somebody who's interested in like security and keeping their own network safe or own computers safe. It's a great story to show you how easy it is to get information, and it's a really great book. Kevin Mitnick is now a public speaker. He travels around the United States and the world giving talks about how easy hacking is, and he also is a security expert now, and so he has given up the hacking life that we know of, and now gets paid to go into certain companies and test their security systems and such. And he travels the world talking about it. So there is a moral of the story as well. All right, moving on to the last book that I picked for today. This is a book that I just finished this past week. If you've hanged out with us in the Discord chat room at all, one of my favorite TV shows, it's a TV show that's on the History Channel. As far as I know, it has it's one of the best rated TV shows out there right now for the History Channel. And it's a show that I love to hate, but I love watching it. And it's called The Curse of Oak Island. If you've never heard of this, it's a fascinating television story. It's a real life treasure hunt that is happening in Nova Scotia on an island called Oak Island, just off the southern coast of Nova Scotia. And there is a 200-year history of people trying to find this particular treasure. And the story is that in 1765, a group of 3 boys rode over to the island to do some hunting, I believe. And they found an oak tree with a sort of a pulley system that was attached to a cut-off oak limb. And they noticed that underneath this pulley was a depression in the ground that was about 14 feet wide by 12 feet across or something like that. And I don't have all the details. This is kind of going off just some memory. And basically they found that they started digging, and just a couple feet down they found some flagstones that were covering this entire area. So they removed the flagstones and dug down a little farther, and they found a group of oak trees cut and lined up to form a platform. So they thought that they were finding treasure, and they removed the oak trees and kept digging and went through some various stone. They kept digging down, found another layer of oak trees all the way across the pit. They again thought that they found the treasure and removed those. They kept digging, and they did this. They realized they're going to need some more help. They raised some funding to have people help them out, and they actually, every 10 feet going down for 90 feet, they would find these layers of oak trees. And eventually they came to the 80 or 90 foot level, and they found a stone with some markings on it that looked like a coded message of some kind. And when they removed that stone and came back the next day, the entire pit was flooded up to the high water mark, or not the high water mark, the water table level of the ocean. So ever since then, there has been a sort of gold rush of a few people dedicating their entire lives from the early 1800s all the way up to the present to try to find a way to get access to whatever treasure would be there. Now, there's a fascinating history. Some people believe that there was treasure there and it has been removed. Other people believe that the treasure is still there. But there has been thousands and thousands of dollars spent, shaft after shaft dug, and the shafts have been flooded. And with new technology that comes out, new pumps, they found ways to sort of try to drain the water. And every single time they can't actually get to the treasure until they found that on one of the shores there was actually a sort of man-made flood tunnel made up of what was called a French drain, so rocks piled up in a trench that went underground and flooded out these tunnels. And so then there's a history of them trying to cut off these flood tunnels. And it is a fascinating, fascinating story. And there are many, many different theories on what possibly could this have been. Where did the treasure come from? And Nova Scotia had a wide and very long history of active pirates in the area. In the 16 and 1700s, there's also the travel from British and Spanish armadas. There's also stories of stolen gold from various different places around the world. And some of the stories are very far-fetched, but the entire history of this is absolutely fascinating. And recently, there have been treasures around the world that have been discovered accidentally. And one of the big things of Oak Island now is that because of this TV show, it has spun up a sort of tourism industry, and they are making money off the tourism to benefit the search efforts. And because of the history of this, because of the evidence that has been found, because of the people that have purchased the island being financially well off and having their own successful companies with methodologies that are sort of in like the natural gas or oil companies, they have the technologies now to do more with this. The Canadian government has given already $7 million for the search, and they pledge up to $14 more million over the next few years. And it's proving some interesting results. This book, The Curse of Oak Island, the story of the world's longest treasure hunt, is a fascinating look at the entire history from before 1795, when it was first discovered that there might be something there, all the way up until just the recent present, I would say probably 2017, 2018. This book was just released on March 19th of this year, and it is written by Randall Sullivan and narrated by Braden Wright. And again, this is a 5-star book. If you are interested in sort of history and the possibility of history being rewritten, or theories of treasure, and with a bit of a stretch on if it is actually there or not. This story, just like any other story, you have to take with a grain of salt. But the things that have been found there they found coins from the mid-1600s, before the area was sort of populated. They have found lead crosses going back to the Knights Templar in France, and they've proven that it was mined from a particular mine in France. They have found structures under beaches that are like shipping wharfs, or where ships would be docked. They have also found evidence of flood tunnels. They have found also just recently in a particular swamp near the island, they have found, one of the theories has always been that the swamp was man-made. They found parts of an old ship in the swamp, but just recently they did some high resolution scanning, and at the end of this last series on TV, they have basically said that with the scans, it shows the possibility of a ship that has been sort of tipped over and buried in the swamp. So that's what they're looking at for next year. And this is a big thing because the tours for Oak Island, they sell out in literally minutes. The entire summer worth of tours, literally minutes. And this is a big thing for Canada. And it's like I said, a fascinating read. So those are my audiobooks today. So Rise and Fall of the Dinosaurs, Astrophysics for People in a Hurry, Ghost in the Wires, and The Curse of Oak Island all have been recent reads of mine over the last few months. Really interesting books for different reasons. And in the future, I may do more audiobook stuff. I know some people have gotten back to me and expressed their interest in the audiobooks. If you have an idea for a show topic, or you want something that you want me to talk about something, you want me to do some research on something, send it in to me. I would love to hear from you. mrptechreviews@gmail.com. That is my email address. And you can also give me feedback on previous shows. And the more interaction that I get, the more fun this is to do. So if you're listening, no matter where you are, stop what you're doing and write me in a message. And I would be glad to get back to you. I try to get back the same day. Sometimes I get very busy and it might take a day or two, but I really do try to give feedback. If you're a new listener and you want to join in the Discord chat room, there's a link on the website, mrptechreviews.com. And as always, go to the Podnuts Tech Podcast Network, podnuts.com. Check out all the other great shows there. I appreciate all of you guys listening week after week. I appreciate your support and look forward to doing many more episodes. That's going to do it for this week, guys. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.